Hi everyone, and welcome to the Eversheds Sutherland Regulation Best Interest videocast series. My name is Arnold and I'm a partner at Eversheds Sutherland, and I'm joined by my colleague Ben Marzouk. And today we're going to talk about the record-keeping requirements under Regulation Best Interest. And one of the things to keep in mind with the record-keeping requirements is they weren't one of the more controversial provisions of the Reg BI developments. There were comment letters received by the SEC related to the record-keeping requirements, but unlike some of the other provisions that included hundreds and hundreds of pages of comments and concerns with the rule, the record-keeping requirements were relatively straightforward. Ben, could you talk a little bit about what the substantive requirements are of the record-keeping requirements under Reg BI?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And like you mentioned, the record-keeping requirements were fairly straightforward. At a very high level, what the new requirement puts on broker-dealers is an obligation to capture all information collected from and provided to the retail customers in connection with regulation best interest. In addition, the identity of each registered representative associated with the account, if there is a registered representative associated with that account, also needs to be captured as part of the same record-keeping requirements. Finally, the customer's refusal or inability to provide certain information to the broker-dealer would excuse the broker-dealer from that particular requirement. So if you have an uncooperative customer, the broker-dealer would be excused for capturing information collected from that customer. Right. Eric, how long do firms need to keep these records?
So the record retention requirement, Ben, is 6 years, and it's 6 years after the earlier of the date on which the account was closed or the date on which information was collected, provided, replaced, or added to the customer's account information. So now that we know the basics of the content requirements for the record-keeping rules under Reg BI, let's talk a little bit about what firms should do next to address these requirements. So as with any project we do, we're going to look to what we have existing and in place to help us out with this process. And thankfully, under the record-keeping obligations of Reg BI, there's going to be a number of record-keeping systems as well as record-keeping items that we can build off of to satisfy our Reg BI obligations. So things like customer account information, certain parts of the investor profile, KYC information, information on the rep of record attached to an account, all of those things are going to give us the building blocks that we need to build out our Reg BI record-keeping compliance. And I know, Ben, that you've been giving some thought to what a new or additional requirements there might be under Reg BI. Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, firms would be able to use and rely on their existing record-keeping systems to capture some of the information required to be captured under regulation best interest. However, there are going to be new records that firms would need to create. First and foremost, the regulation best interest disclosure document that's provided to the retail customers would need to be captured as part of the SEC's Reg BI record-keeping requirements. In addition, there's certain other information that might be provided to the customer in connection with certain recommendations, such as account type recommendations, rollover recommendations, fees and cost considerations related to the recommendations that firms will need to think about capturing as part of their new, robust record-keeping systems. If we switch gears for a second, Eric, could you talk about the practical concerns related to these rules?
Sure. So there were a couple of items identified during the rulemaking process that firms and commenters were concerned about. The first was whether or not the rule was going to require duplicate records. And what the SEC said in response to those commenters was that it's not our intention to require firms to keep duplicate records. So for example, if you have customer account information you're keeping in the records to cover a Exchange Act rule, that same record, that same information can be used to satisfy the requirements under Reg BI. The other comment that was received by the SEC was whether or not the records needed to be made on a recommendation by recommendation basis. And what the SEC said there is no, that they do not. That when you take a step back, what the SEC's view was that the record-keeping requirements really give firms an opportunity to demonstrate their compliance with Reg BI. And that's sort of how they viewed the new record-keeping requirements. Ben, I thought maybe you might have some thoughts in terms of timing and when firms ought to begin thinking about working through their record-keeping obligations.
Well, I think the answer to that is fairly simple: as soon as possible. The new rules take effect June 30th, 2020, and firms will need to move quickly to build out the proper systems to comply with the new record-keeping requirements. Thank you for joining us. For more information on regulation best interests and other bottom line videos, please access eversheds-sutherland.com.